Hey guys, Morten and Henning from FlippedNormals here. And in today's video, we are talking about new features coming to ZBrush, new features about Maya Indie, new updates to Substance Painter, as well as Nuke Indie also being released. So very exciting. So to start off with, just want to remind everyone that we're currently having a summer sale where all products on the FlippedNormals marketplace are 40% off. So head over there and check out some of the products we have on sale. So first up is going to be the ZBrush 2020 official sneak peek, I suppose. Pixologic showed off some cool stuff in this. I feel like it's always the case when there's a new update coming for ZBrush. It's always things that no one really needs, but everyone is always like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the cloth brushes we're seeing now, they are interesting. We've already got questions: is Marvelous Designer now going to be obsolete because of it? And while it looks really cool, it's important to know that these are new features which are probably going to be helping your projects along, but they're not going to be stealing away the market share of Marvelous. Like it still hasn't happened that ZBrush has really taken over anything over the last 10 years based on new features they've been coming out with.
Yeah, I guess what people are most interested or hyped about is the cloth stuff. And a lot of people are comparing it to obviously Blender because they're doing some cloth brushes in there as well. And the same thing goes there. It's like it's a cool feature, but it doesn't fundamentally change the way that you're going to work. It might help you speed up some types of work when it comes to doing clothing, adding additional details, maybe doing some frills on the edges of skirts like they show in the beginning of the video. So it's definitely a cool feature, but it's wait for the hype to die down and people get their hands on it and then try to test it and see what you can actually do with it.
What I'm very curious about is how much of it is actually simulation and how much of it is just clever math being done. Because in the beginning, it looks a bit like it's actually simmed and it's called dynamic. But I don't know, because we've seen this before when it comes to, particularly like Morten was saying with Blender, where the cloth brushes there are not being simmed. They're looking at like curvatures and all sorts of crazy stuff there, but they're not actually being simmed. So I'm very curious what ZBrush has in store for us there.
And then next up, there's the real-time micro poly feature, which is like, it looks like micromesh on steroids and it's real time and you can do stuff dynamically with your meshes, sort of dragging things around and previewing it in real time. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything where you look at that and go like, oh, that could be interesting to use that for?
No, it looks like a lot of like the micromesh and nano mesh and all of those, which I personally don't really use a whole lot. And they look like really cool features, like for tech demos, but I don't find that I actually end up using those.
No.
That's more maybe my personal workflow. If I was doing a lot of like full on ZBrush cowboying, like you doing everything in ZBrush with all sorts of crazy concepts, they do look really useful.
Yeah, like for certain types of concepting, making different kinds of meshes really quickly, I guess they could be super useful there.
Yeah.
Personally, yeah, the same goes for me. I mean, workflow-wise, I probably wouldn't be using them.
We also have some CModeler enhancements as well, which are very much welcome. CModeler is something I don't personally use a whole lot, but once you do need it, it's really useful. So, however much they can improve CModeler, the better it is.
I remember in the beginning when CModeler came out, people did the same thing that they were talking about Marvelous and the cloth brushes now. Traditional modeling is dead. Well, it turns out you can't do n-gons in ZBrush, which makes cutting crazy shapes and like doing retopology with CModeler kind of tricky. So I'm curious to see what the actual improvements are because nothing's really been released. They're just saying there are improvements to it or enhancements to it. So I would be curious to get my hands on that. Then there's some speed improvements, which is always nice. Things can always get faster. And then finally, there's the ZBrush Core Mini feature of saving an image and loading it in as a 3D model, which is cool. But again, it seems like kind of gimmicky.
Yeah.
It's probably nice for ZBrush Core Mini where you can share an image with, like, you're just starting out, and you want to do some simple 3D models you share with your family. They can view an image of it, and then you can load it as a 3D model afterwards. But I mean, we have standardized formats for this kind of stuff, so it doesn't really do anything for me.
It might be one of those where you're thinking like, why would you ever want to do that? I can just save it as a C tool, and then after you used it, you're like, I'm never saving as a C tool ever again.
Yeah, maybe.
PNG is my preferred format for saving 3D models. So it's one of those which it's hard to quantify how important it is before we really used it. But I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
Should be interesting because we also don't really know what the restrictions are on that file type.
No.
Is it like it can just do everything, or is it kind of limited?
But regardless, it's that if it's good or not, it's some real innovation.
Yeah,
for better or worse.
Next up, we got some news about Substance. So this is probably the most awaited feature of Substance, I suppose. Like having the ability to paint with UDIMS inside a Substance Painter. It's something they've been talking about for years. They have been talking to VFX studios about this. VFX studios have been crying out, like, please add UDIM support. And they've finally done it, which is amazing to see.
So just real quick, like for people who don't know what UDIMs are, is imagine you have a whole character and it's like a 1K map. And now you need more resolution. And now you make it a 4K map. And you need more resolution. And you make it 8K. And you reach a point where you just can't make it higher resolution. So, but what if you could make a separate texture map, which is 4K for the head, and maybe a 1K map for the body? Well, that's exactly what UDIMs are about. It means you can have separate texture maps for different areas. And this isn't just like a convention thing or something to make your life a little bit easier. This is absolutely like 100% essential in certain workflows where you really have to go close up on characters.
Yeah, the problem before was sort of like, let's say for a character like this, the dragon that Damien did, it needs a lot of resolution, and you can see how crisp it is. You wouldn't be able to get that with just one UV tile. So you add more of them, and now you have the ability to sort of paint across them. Before, you would have to split it up into multiple texture sets, paint on one, maybe like the body is one, but then you wouldn't be able to do these splashes that connects the body to the wings, for example. So that's one of the things that makes it really powerful.
I know this is something that Adobe, it's a lot algorithmic, now have been working on for years and years and years. And this is probably the biggest thing they could have done for their future in terms of like frameworks. This will significantly improve adoption, because before there were just so many things you just fundamentally couldn't do in Painter. But now because of this, it opens up a whole new market for what you can do. I've been a texture artist for years, and I've mostly been dealing with Mari, but I don't really like Mari. Nobody really likes working with Mari. Very heavy, it's very clunky. But now I will be able to transfer a lot of my work directly to Painter and do it right there instead.
A cool feature there is like the UDIM masking that they've added now. So because everything is connected to the same UV set and not just spread across multiple UV sets, you can actually mask things out based on the UDIM tile, which can be handy if you have a very complex mesh. Another thing that they're adding, they haven't added it right now. They're only supporting the UDIM tag, like the naming tag, but they will support or will add support for Mudbox and ZBrush naming down the line.
Yeah, that's really useful pipeline-wise. They also have a feature, which is, it's one of these, it doesn't sound very exciting, but it's really useful, is that you can actually pause the engine. So that if you have to enable like 100 different layers and do all that, you don't have to see them update. You just know you have to enable 100 different layers. Now you can pause the engine, and your performance doesn't clog down at all. Very, very useful.
Yeah, especially when you get very complex layer stacks that do a lot of smart things. Doing any one action, you need to compute that, wait for it to take an effect, and okay, now I can continue. So having the ability to paint on your layers but not have it compute is actually super, super useful. And then once you're done with painting, you just unpause the engine, computes, and everything looks great again.
It's also really cool now that one of the optimizations is that the bakers will now output to grayscale instead of RGB. If you're doing like a curvature or an AO map or whatever it might be, you don't need RGB. So this will significantly decrease the project sizes, which again increases performance. They said something like 20 to 60% smaller project sizes. I guess that's like the base project before you've added all your crazy textures.
Yeah, but it's nice to see that they're doing optimizations, because we all know that Substance archives could, several gigabytes just worth of painting data in there. So having this kind of stuff being optimized is really nice to see. And they've done a few more optimizations, making it faster for exporting textures, as well as loading mesh maps asynchronously, which just means that when you're loading any kind of maps into Painter, it does it like one at a time. You don't have to wait. Substance doesn't crash or looks like it's crashing while it's importing a bunch of stuff, which is really nice.
So overall, we are very impressed with what the guys at Adobe are doing with Substance. It has a very bright future, and it's one of my favorite software, and every update is amazing.
Then we have something that I think is really exciting, actually. I wasn't that excited about it in the beginning. Then I started looking into it more, and it was like, wow, that's really cool. Maya Indie. So Maya Indie was launched, I think, in August or something last year, something like that. And Maya Indie basically gives you a full version of Maya for a fraction of the cost. It's $250 a year for an organization or user that makes less than $100,000 a year. So this basically opens up the entirety of Maya for individuals, for smaller businesses that want to use Maya but couldn't before because they couldn't afford it. So I think this is an excellent move for them.
So this is my little slight conspiracy theory, but I think that this is a response to Blender actually becoming a real software now. Because this came around a year ago, and that was just after Blender 2.8 came out. I think they need to seriously step up their game in terms of making it available to people. And I think this is an excellent move. It's a full version of Maya, without really any real limitations, apart from the money you make.
Yeah, and I think it was available in like 4 or 5 countries before: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the US. And now it's available in 26 more countries from August the 7th. And I think they will be adding more countries later down the line. I feel like I've read something about legal restrictions in some countries. So they are working on rolling it out, I guess, more worldwide down the line.
So no real new features of Maya here, just purely that Maya will be far more accessible to, honestly, most 3D artists will make less than $100,000 a year.
Realistically, yeah.
So it will make it far more accessible to everyone.
One thing they did confirm as well was that it will renew at $250. This was not present in the pilot program before. Before there, it would renew at the $1,500 or something like that. But now it will renew at $250, so you can keep using it after the first year's over as well.
And then we have a controversial one. This is Nuke Indie. Nuke is, for people who don't know, it's the industry-leading compositing software. It's essentially the only compositor used anywhere in the industry professionally. And it's really cool that they're adding an indie version to it, but the problem is they're adding significant restrictions to it. Now, the good news is that you're essentially getting Nuke Studio, which is like Nuke X combined with like an editor for a fraction of the cost. Still quite expensive. How much was it?
€500, I think.
Yeah, €500 a year. So it's still quite expensive, but it's a fraction, of course, of the cost of what Nuke Studio is. But the problem is the restrictions are really, really draconian. It means that you can't open up Nuke files in general or Nuke gizmos. You can't really use Python. It's something like limited to 10 Python commands, so it's extremely simple. And there is no third-party support for plugins or like whatsoever. So the only person who would be able to use this would be like a single freelancer who only does projects on his own. I don't see how you could use this in, like it specifically says you can't use it in a pipeline. So if you were to use this with other artists, they would also have to be on Nuke Indie as well.
Yeah, we just talked about this. Like this Nuke Indie would be perfect for someone like me because I would only use Nuke to import my footage. I don't really do any kind of masking even. Well, sometimes some light grading, combine my passes, and then export it out again. That's about it. But that's €500 is a lot for just that. And we were talking about Fusion. Fusion is free, right?
Yeah, I think it's free and also has like a $300 plan depending on what it is. But that's a permanent license,
yeah,
which is a lot less than what the founder is asking. So if I were to, if I was doing the amount of compositing Morten is talking about, I would have just straight up used Fusion. Fusion is phenomenal at what it's doing, and then you don't have the crazy restrictions you're seeing in Nuke Indie.
Oh, one great restriction I don't think we talked about was the ability to not work with H.264 footage, like at all. So yeah, and ACC audio as well. For some reason that's restricted. It's the most popular video format that everyone seems to use. I don't know why, but I mean, you could always export passes out of Nuke Indie, get that into something like Premiere, and then export H.264 if you wanted to. But it seems like I'm not entirely sure what Nuke Indie is for, because the alternatives out there are pretty good. It could be if you're looking to get into compositing, where you're doing some compositing and you are used to Nuke like me. I'm not really a Fusion user. I've used Nuke for many years, and so if I didn't want to learn a new software, I could just jump into it. But still, for that, 500 euros it's quite steep, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to be very curious to see how the market rewards or punishes the founders for this, if they're actually going to be making money on this, or if it's too draconian in the restrictions.
Could just be to, keep up their like throat hold on the industry for compositors. I feel like Nuke kind of needs a Blender, like Maya has Blender, obviously with Fusion, but it seems like you need a software that can gain traction in the industry to really push the foundry to do something new or think about it in a different way.
Yeah, I really hope that Natron gets picked up again in terms of the development. If you're not sure what that is, Natron is essentially like an open source version of Nuke, but unlike Blender, it's a bit shaky when it comes to the development. But it works perfectly fine if you're doing simple things as well. You can straight up use Nuke hotkeys. It looks straight up like Nuke. I'm almost surprised they haven't been sued to oblivion for some kind of copyright infringement of the interface or something.
Maybe after this video. That's what happens.
Yeah, we're sorry, guys.
I think that just about wraps up all the news we had for you in this video. Make sure to jump over to the FlippedNormals marketplace, like I said in the beginning, where we're currently having a 40% sale, our summer sale here. Everything is 40% off. And we will be pushing out videos during this week as well to sort of guide you to which products we think would be best for you, depending on if you're into sculpting, texturing, or games, whatever it is. So make sure to keep an eye out for our social media channels to be kept up to date.